Well, we're beginning a brand new series today called Your Move, and I'm very, very excited about this series. We're talking about decision making. And for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to give you 4 questions to ask anytime you're making a decision. They're appropriate for all decisions, but specifically, these 4 questions are designed to help you when you're having to make a decision you never thought you'd have to make, or a decision you don't really even want to have to make. For example, you're in a relationship and you're falling in love and things are going great, and then your mama or your best friend sits you down, or your mama and your best friend sit you down and say, you know what, we don't think she's right for you, or we don't think he's right for you. And suddenly you find yourself in this tug of war. Do I follow my heart or do I follow my mama? And then you have a decision to make, and you're thinking, I don't even want to make this decision. I don't want to have to choose. Or you're in a situation where you're loving your job and things are great and you're so grateful to have a job, and then you get a call from another city and some friends are starting a company. They've invited you to join them in starting a company, and oh my gosh, you have a decision to make, and you sit down with your husband or wife, and you didn't expect this, but now you have to make a decision. Or you're in school and things aren't going so well at home financially, and your parents are trying to keep you in school, but you're trying to be a team player and you got to make a decision about school, and you never thought you'd have to make a decision like this. Or you're trying to make a decision about whether or not you can keep your son or daughter in their current school, and finances are tight, and you're thinking, we never anticipated having to make this decision. This was not on our radar screen. I don't even want to make this decision. You're in a relationship, and the person you're in a relationship with is pushing you to go further, faster in terms of the relationship and where the relationship is headed, and you're feeling some tension, and you don't want to lose him, you don't want to lose her, but at the same time, you're not really ready to go that far, that fast, and you find yourself with this dilemma, and you got to make a decision. And at some point in all of our lives, we're forced to make decisions we didn't plan to make, we don't want to make, and the time is always compressed, there's never enough time, and the information is always limited. We wish we could know more, and specifically, we wish we could know the future. But you've got to make a decision. It is your move, and you've got to decide. And we're going to talk about 4 questions to help you make those kinds of decisions. Now, the thing is that's so interesting, when you hear somebody tell their story, and if you're in a community group, one of the things we love to do is to start community group out with people telling their stories. And when you hear another person's story, you hear about a sequence of decisions, don't you? Because life is all about making decisions. And oftentimes in a person's story, and your story is no different, as they're telling their story, they get to what becomes a defining moment, a fork in the road. We could go this way or this way. We could say yes, we could say no. We could continue the relationship, we could end it. And as they tell their story, you realize, wow, that was a huge decision, but when they were making it, they had no idea how big of a decision it was. And all of us, again, look back at our own lives, at things we're so glad we did. In fact, we're so glad we made those decisions or opted for that option that when we think about having not gone that direction, it almost makes us sick at our stomach, like, oh, what if I'd said no? What if I'd turned around? What if I'd gotten out of that relationship? Or what if I'd gotten in that relationship? What if we had bought that house? Or what if we'd moved? Or what if we'd put our house on the market? You know, you think, oh, I'm so grateful that we made the right decision. At the same time, we all look back in their decisions we would love to go back and remake or unmake. Because again, they sent us in a direction we wish we'd never gone, and we look back and think, if only I could go back, to October the 4th, 1989 or 92, whatever it was, and relive that decision, my life could be so different. So the point is, when we're forced to make decisions we don't anticipate ever having to make, oftentimes they really are defining moments for us. And the other thing that makes it so important and so hard, we don't know what hangs in the balance, do we? We don't know, we make a big decision or we think it's a big decision. We really don't know how big it is because we never know what hangs in the balance. We don't know the significance of some of those decisions. And if you have kids, you watch them struggle. And as a parent, I look at some of my kids' decisions and I think, you have no idea how big a decision this is. You have no idea how this could impact your future. And there's no way to help them understand that because of their age and what they've experienced in life. But oftentimes, these decisions that confront us and surprise us have huge ramifications for our future. Just think about this. Think about the significance of this decision when George Washington, we studied about this in school, remember? He was confronted with the option of becoming king. Remember that? The Congress thought, maybe we should make him the king. Think about what hung in the balance of that decision that he didn't fully understand or couldn't fully appreciate. And chose, again, not to be king, but it said, hey, 2 terms is enough. And it set a standard for our whole nation. Or imagine how different the world would be if the generals who surrounded Adolf Hitler decided to lean into their conscience rather into the wishes of a madman. Think of how different the world would be. And they had no idea in those early years just what hung in the balance of that decision that many of them were forced to make that they never wanted to make. So life is full of these decisions. And life is really a sequence of these kinds of decisions. But what do you do? And how do you decide? And how do you decide when the time is compressed, don't have much time? How do you decide when the options are limited? And how do you decide when you think, there's a sense in which my whole future is at stake? If I don't take this job, I don't know if there'll be another one. If I don't take advantage of this opportunity, there may never be another opportunity like this. If I don't stay in this relationship, there may not be another relationship that comes along anytime soon. So I want to give you these 4 questions. And again, they're appropriate for every kind of decision, but they are specifically designed to help us through these times in life when we don't even want to decide, but a decision has to be made. Now, the first question is really the hardest one. And I chose to talk about this one first because in these 4 weeks, we're going to review all of these 4 questions. And this is a question that I look forward to coming back to all 4 weeks because it is such a foundational question. It's a question that on the surface may not even seem that important, but at the same time, this is a question that for many of us may seem to be very, very threatening. And it is a question that very, very few people pause and ask because, again, it can be so very threatening. And here's the first question I want to talk about. Am I being completely honest with myself? Am I being completely honest with myself? Am I being completely honest with myself? In other words, am I telling myself the truth about why I'm inclined to go in this direction? Am I being honest with myself about why I'm inclined to choose this option of the two? Am I being completely honest with myself? Now, let me tell you about you. And I know about you because I know about me. You are an expert at selling yourself on something you really want to do, whether you should do it or not. You are very good at this. You may not be able to sell anything else in your life. You may be a terrible professional salesperson and should stay out of sales. But when it comes to selling yourself on something you want to do, you are very, very good at this. Think of the things, and we'll try to keep this surface today so we don't, get too intimidated by the topic. But think of the silly things you have talked yourself into purchasing, and think of the silly reasons you gave yourself for purchasing them, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. And so we do this self-talk. The easiest example is think of how easy it is for you to talk yourself out of exercise and into dessert. And you know what? We think of it. We actually sit there and we come up with reasons. You're scheduled to run, you're scheduled to work out, you even maybe got a trainer, you've got a schedule, you join the gym, and it's time to go. And you know what? You never do this, you never go. I don't want to go. I'm not going. You don't do that. You start saying, well, I'm leaving work later than I thought I would, and I can probably go tomorrow, and my ankle kind of hurts, and all of a sudden, isn't it true? We start talking to ourselves, and we sell ourselves on a bad idea. And who does it hurt? Only us. Or you're sitting there, at dinner, and the lady comes along or the guy comes along and says, hey, you want the dessert menus, and you start talking to yourself. You do, don't you? And you're thinking, well, I didn't have dessert last week, and so-and-so's probably paying for it. Or maybe you're at your home, or you're somebody else's home. Now think of this, and I've done this. This is mine. We're at community group with our small group, and the hostess has made a cake or a pie, and she puts it out there. And here's what I start telling myself. I don't want to hurt her feelings. Why don't we just say, I'm lazy and have no self-control. I think I'll have a piece. Why don't we just say what's true? But we don't do it because we feel compelled. We can feel compelled to talk ourselves into, which means we're not honest with ourselves. We deceive ourselves. Here's how it works. And I'm kind of making this up, but it helps me understand. It's as if when I'm confronted with 2 options and I have to decide, the one that my heart it gets so easily wrapped around, the one that has the most emotional appeal, it's as if my heart goes, want some of that, and it sends my brain a message. Go find us some reasons. Go get us some reasons, because we want that. I'm feeling it. Now go get us some reasons. We can't just say, because I feel like it's a brain. Get busy and go find us some reasons. Well, I don't want to hurt her feelings. Oh, that's a good reason. Got any more reasons? Well, I haven't had dessert in 2 weeks. That's a good one. How about, And so it's like our heart tells our brain to go find reasons for things. And then, this is crazy, we start believing our own made-up reasons for our bad decisions. The reason I know this is true, if this were not true, you would be healthier and you would be wealthier. You would be healthier and wealthier. You'd be skinnier and you'd have more money in the bank. You'd have more money and less weight. I mean, how many ways can I say it? You would be healthier and you would be wealthier. And the reason you're not healthier and wealthier, this is unbelievable, you talked yourself out of it. You did. I did too. We talk ourselves out of it because we aren't even honest with ourselves. Now, there's another thing that makes this difficult, and that's this, is because most of us, if we're real honest, even if you're a Christian or you believe in God or you're a church person or whatever, for the most part, we're not really on a truth quest, and we're not really on a do the right thing quest. We're on a happiness quest. I want to be happy. So you give me 3 options or 2 options, or suddenly I'm choosing a major or a school or whatever it is. And my inclination is, and it's that heart thing, is which of these will make me happiest? And I just tend to drift toward happy. And then I send my brain again, go find me some reasons to support Happy Quest because I want to be happy. And the problem, as you know, is what makes me happy today makes me unhappy tomorrow. So I just chase these things. And every time I reverse directions, I have reasons for it. I mean, just to be bottom line, people get married and divorced for the same reason. Well, he makes me happy. Well, now he doesn't make me happy. She makes me happy. I think I'll be happy if I'm married. I'm not happy anymore. People start and stop smoking for basically the same reason. I like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I like the way it makes me feel. It's crazy because we're on happiness quest. Our heart gets latched onto an option. We start coming up with reasons, lie to ourselves, and boom, there we go down in the wrong direction and buy things we don't need and don't do the things we should do. And it's absolutely crazy. And we really just have ourselves to blame. And it's because we don't ask this question and really ask this question. Am I being completely honest with myself? Am I being completely honest with myself? Another way of asking it is this. Why am I doing this? You have to pause. Why am I doing this? Really? Why am I doing this? Really? What's the real reason I'm doing this? And the reason we don't ask this question, it is a very, very, very convicting, uncomfortable question. There are times we don't even really want to know why we do the things we do. But if you want to make the right decision, and if you want to look back on a defining moment in your life and go, whoa, I'm so relieved that's what I opted for when it came to that house, when it came to that purchase, staying put, getting in and out of a relationship, buying whatever it might be, you've got to begin with asking yourself this question. Am I being completely honest with myself? Now, there's another thing that makes this really difficult as well. The other thing is, and don't get up and leave till I finish, there's something kind of wrong with you, okay? There is. There's something wrong with you, and you don't have any control over it. And let me explain what I mean by that. And I have to do that. I'm going to look at a verse. In fact, if you have a Bible and want to follow along, we're just looking at one verse, so there won't be much following along. It's just one verse. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. Jeremiah 17:9, if you want to find it. Jeremiah is kind of in the middle of the Bible. Let me kind of set this up for you. This is interesting. Jeremiah was a prophet, not a bullfrog. Jeremiah was a prophet. It might have been a bullfrog as well. Jeremiah was a prophet, and he was a prophet around 600 BC, 585. He was a prophet actually for 40 years to Judah, and the kingdom of Israel had split, and he was a prophet in the southern kingdom where Jerusalem was. And he was a prophet during a time, and this is so important, when God was judging the nation of Israel. God had a contract with Israel. God said, if you behave, if you obey, if you'll keep my law, then I'll bless you. And if you abandon me and worship pagan foreign gods, I'm going to abandon you and just kind of watch you spin in the wind until you come back to me. So this was a time when Israel and Judah specifically had abandoned Yahweh worship, or worshiping the one true living God. So they were being judged. So here's the story. Around 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king or the emperor of Babylon, came through and went to Egypt and conquered Egypt and basically destroyed the Egyptian army. And on his way home, he stopped in Palestine, or Israel, and conquered Palestine and Judah and Israel. He conquered that whole area and essentially said, okay, I'm your new Lord and master, and from now on, you send your taxes and your wealth to me. And then he picked a guy named Jehoiakim, and he said, Jehoiakim, you're going to get to be the king of Judah, but you're working for me. Okay, so don't start thinking you're like a real king. You're a vassal king. You're like a servant king. And then Nebuchadnezzar went home back to Babylon and left Jehoiakim in charge of Judah. Well, Jeremiah, the prophet, went to Jehoiakim and said, now look, the reason that we are under Nebuchadnezzar's thumb is because God's judging the nation, and we just need to go with that. Just send him his taxes, send him his money. Don't get any ideas. You're not really a real king. You're just kind of a pretend king, and that's okay. The main issue is not who the king is. The main issue, who are we going to worship? The issue is, who are we going to worship? Are we going to keep worshiping these pagan gods, or are we going to worship the real God? So Jeremiah is trying to get the nation to turn back to God. Meanwhile, Jehoiakim's thinking like, I'm the king, and I don't want to send taxes and money to Nebuchadnezzar over there in Babylon. So he decides to raise an army, and he's going to fight Babylon and free his nation from Babylonian tyranny. And Jeremiah the prophet's like, okay, that's a really bad idea. Then he goes to Jehoiakim and says, that's a really bad idea. Number one, do you know how big they are? It would be like Hilton Head, South Carolina, declaring war on the United States, essentially. And no offense if you're from Hilton Head, but you can imagine trying to raise an army and saying, hey, we're not part of the United States anymore. We're not, it would take about 3 hours for that to be over with, okay? Well, that's essentially what Jehoiakim does, because he gets all puffed up and arrogant, and Jeremiah is going, Jehoiakim, you can't defeat Nebuchadnezzar, and besides, God's not going to honor it because God's judging you. The issue isn't how big is your army, the issue is who is your God. Jehoiakim doesn't listen to Jeremiah, launches this attack. There's a big battle, not actually a pretty small, short battle, and Nebuchadnezzar comes in and squashes Judah once again, throws Jehoiakim out, and he puts in a new king named Zedekiah. And he says, okay, Zedekiah, don't make the same mistake as your predecessor, okay? I'm making you king, but you're not a real king. You're kind of a fake king, because I'm the king. I'm Nebuchadnezzar. You send me the taxes, send me a percentage of all the crops, behave yourself, and I'll let you pretend like you're a king. And then Nebuchadnezzar goes home. A few years go by. Zedekiah goes, you know what? I'm going to make a truce with Egypt. And together with Egypt, we're going to conquer Nebuchadnezzar and send him running. And Jeremiah goes to see Zedekiah and says, okay, Zedekiah, look, that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea because God is judging Judah. You can't win because God's not for you. God is for Nebuchadnezzar. He's using Nebuchadnezzar to get the people's attention. The issue isn't who's got the biggest army. The issue is, who are you going to worship? And Zedekiah says, get rid of this guy. Eventually, Jeremiah won't shut up, by the way. He has Jeremiah put in a well. And in this well, Jeremiah continues to prophesy, which I think is a pretty interesting picture if you think about that. You're walking by and you hear this voice, repent, repent. And where's it coming from? Oh, it's in a well. It's a talking well. Anyway, and then poor Jeremiah, he gets kidnapped. I mean, his life is just horrible because the prophet always had bad news. Anyway, Zedekiah's like, I'm not going to listen to Jeremiah. And so he puts Jeremiah in jail, launches this, raises an army, decides he's going to throw off, Babylonian rule. And guess what Nebuchadnezzar does? Exactly what Jeremiah said he would. Sends his army down, squashes Zedekiah, pokes out his eyes, kills his family before he takes his eyes out, puts him in chains, and hauls him off to Babylon to be kind of something to show off to all the other people in the kingdom, to show how powerful Nebuchadnezzar is. Now, interesting story. You should read the Bible. It's all in there. Now, during that time, Jeremiah is watching these kings make these terrible decisions. I mean, it's like, hello, a fifth grader would know that you don't want to raise an army against Babylon. They just defeated Egypt. I mean, there is no way you're going to win. And time after time, the king said, get out of here, Jeremiah. We don't care what you say. We're going to worship whatever God we want to, and we're going to be the big shots. And again, it didn't work. And during that time, Jeremiah, he writes the whole book of Jeremiah, essentially. But in the book, he makes a statement that describes something that's true of you and true of me, just as it was true of Jehoiakim and Zedekiah. And he makes this overarching statement about the human heart and why it can't be trusted. Here's what he says, Jeremiah 17, verse 9. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Your heart, my heart, your mama's heart, your children's heart, your grandbaby's heart. Now you're going, no, not my grandbaby. My grandbaby's perfect. Your grandbaby was born with a deceitful heart. Just give him or her a few years, you'll see it, all right? The heart is deceitful above all things, and then listen to this last phrase, and beyond cure. Do you know what that means? It means it can't be, say it with me, cured. Yeah, you don't have to be a professional preacher to understand. It means there's no cure. This is what that means. It means you won't mature past this. You won't educate yourself past this. You're not going to get so spiritual that it's no longer a reality. You can't read enough Bible for this to go away. You can't come to church enough times for this to go away. You can't pray so hard that this goes away. That for the rest of your life, your heart is beyond cure. It is permanently broken. Which means, and this is why this is so important, every time you make a decision, every time I make a decision, every time I'm looking at options, I have to look at those options knowing I carry within me the potential to deceive myself. In fact, he uses the word deceitful. He doesn't say the heart is dishonest. He could have said that. He said the heart is deceitful. Two different words with two different meanings. You've met people who were so dishonest that you knew they were dishonest when you met them. People who are dishonest and you think, you're just lying. I see it. But deceit is different, isn't it? Deceit is I'm going to take a little truth and a little untruth, and I'm going to mix just enough together to fool you. I'm going to mix just enough together to where I can manipulate you. I'm going to take just enough truth and just enough untruth, and I'm going to put them together in such a way that you will make the wrong decision. That's what your heart has the ability to do. That's why our hearts sell us on some of the dumbest ideas imaginable, and we look back and go, you know what? I should have seen that coming. That your heart, as wonderful a person as you are, your heart is deceitful and it is beyond cure. And if that wasn't enough, listen to the way he ends the verse. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Now, in his context, he's looking at these kings going, good grief. Again, why couldn't they see this coming? Who can understand the heart? In your world, it looks like this. This is why you look back on some of the purchases you've made, and you've said, what was I thinking? I mean, how stupid was that? Or you look back on some past relationships and you think, what was I thinking? Why didn't I see that coming? How could I be so foolish? How could I be so dumb? I don't understand why I did what I did. And Jeremiah says, well, welcome to the world of your heart, because your heart is so deceitful. If left unchecked, if you just let it go, if you don't pay attention, if you don't pause and ask yourself this question, why am I doing this really? Am I being completely honest with myself? If you don't pause from time to time and do that, your heart will operate in the background and will deceive you, and you won't be any richer, and you won't be any healthier, and you won't make any better decisions than you did in the last season of your life. You know, this explains something else for us mere mortals, you know? And that's this. We see people who have extraordinary talent and extraordinary wealth, and we think, wow, I'd love to have that much money or that much talent or to be that well known. We watch them, and then we watch them self-destruct, and we're like, what happened? Because you think what I think. If I had that much money, if I had that much wealth, if I had that much fame, I would never do the things they're doing. Well, how is it they can have so much and make such bad decisions? It's because their heart is as sick as your heart, and it's just as beyond cure. You can't grow, mature, educate, wealth your way beyond this. This is something we carry with us every single day, and it has the potential to impact every single decision we make. And how does it work? Our heart gets emotionally wrapped around an option. That's what I want. That's what I want because of a bunch of reasons I'm not going to acknowledge. But brain, I need you to go find some rationality. I need you to go find some reasons that I can begin believing. And then when people ask me, Andy, why did you do that? I'll start spitting out all my crazy reasons. Now, if you have children, especially if you have middle school or high school kids, or nieces or nephews or grandchildren, you have seen this because you've gotten into arguments with your kids and you listen to them argue with you and you're thinking, that's not really why you did that. That's not really why you want that. That's not really the real reason you won't study. That's not really the reason you don't want to eat dinner with us. That's not the real reason. And they're just giving you all these reasons and you're thinking, no, you're just selfish. No, you're just mean. No, you're just lazy. No, you can see through the lie. But when it's us, we believe our own story because your heart, my heart's deceitful. Beyond anything else, Jeremiah says. And it's beyond cure, and no one can completely understand it. So let's close there. Next week we'll come back and we'll talk about the second question. It's kind of hopeless, isn't it? Beyond cure. But it's true, isn't it? Nobody's sitting here going, I don't even know what he's talking about. Because we were born good at this. This is why the question is so important. I'm going to give you a little exercise in just a minute. Why am I doing this? Really? Am I being completely honest with myself? Why am I doing this? Really? Am I being completely honest with myself? Now let me just tell you what. If you will ask yourself that question, here's what you'll experience. That question is both liberating and terrifying all at the same time. It's liberating because if you'll begin to ask yourself that question, I'm going to tell you in a minute how I'd like for you to ask it. If you'll begin to ask yourself, now before I go further, this is very important, so listen up. In this message, I'm not suggesting you tell anyone else the truth about why you do what you do. Okay, we're going to wait on that. Today, I'm just talking about what you tell yourself. Don't jump ahead and say, well, if I admit it to myself, then I have to. No. This is just all about you and you. But it's a liberating question and it's terrifying. It's liberating because here's the deal. Anytime you carry a lie, it grows and gains energy in darkness. In fact, let me try to explain this the best I can. The reason we lie to ourselves is it's the lies that give us the energy to push ahead and do the wrong thing. And when the lie is exposed, it loses its power and it loses its energy, and we lose our momentum toward making a bad decision. So the reason being honest with yourself, brutally honest with yourself, is so liberating is because when you're able to take the lie, bring it out, and admit it, it loses its power over you. It's such a liberating exercise. But it's terrifying because now you're accountable to you. It's terrifying because now you know the truth. It's terrifying because now I have to say the reason I'm choosing to move is not because we need more room and maybe someday we'll have an extra room for the missionaries when they visit. The real reason is I want my friends to think I'm wealthier than they think and I want to have a big house. The reason I want to move is I'm insecure. It's terrifying. The reason you do some of the things you do is you're just afraid. But you can't say that. Well, the reason is because I'm scared. No. The reason is, and then our brain manufactures reasons. Well, the reason is I'm just lonely. The reason is I feel ugly. The reason is I feel left out. The reason is I'm trying to get my dad to approve of me, and I just haven't been able to do that. And honestly, I've come up with 12 reasons, but the bottom line is I think if I do this, if I take this job, if I move, if I start a company, if whatever, finally my dad might approve of me. And now you're getting somewhere. But it's a terrifying exercise because you see yourself in a way you may never, ever want to see yourself. And you know what happens when you see yourself in the light of reality? You become a candidate for God's amazing grace. And you'll experience this verse that you've quoted 1,000 times and the politicians quote all the time, completely out of context. You will experience this verse that you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. But it's a very difficult place to get because we are naturally salespeople and we sell ourselves. Now, let me tell you how I think you should do this. And if you don't have to do it this way, nobody's going to ask because this is between you and you. You need to have a heart-to-heart with yourself. And you need to have it in the mirror. And you need to have it out loud. You need to have it in the mirror. That means you sit in the car because that's the only place you can get alone and adjust the rear view mirror. Or go in the bathroom and shut and lock the door. Or go in the basement somewhere and just prop a mirror. I don't know where you have to go. You need to have this conversation with yourself in a mirror, and you need to have it out loud, because I'm telling you, there's something healthy about speaking the truth. The real reason is not because I don't want to hurt her feelings. The real reason is not because we need a basement. The real reason is not because our other car doesn't get as good a gas mileage as a new one. The real reason is not. You need to have it's not because you just got to have it out loud in the mirror, and it will liberate you, and it will set you up. Here's the thing. It'll set you up to make better decisions for you and for your family and for your future and for the people you love. And you'll learn to quit lying to yourself. You'll always have the capacity. You'll always have the propensity. So will I. But we can conquer it by choosing to tell ourselves the truth. Are you being completely honest with yourself? When you hear yourself convincing your mom and your dad and your boss and your employees and your sister and your cousin, when you hear those words coming out of your mouth explaining why you're doing what you're doing, and there's something inside of you going, I think there's more to it than that, are you willing to stop and get alone? You don't have to tell them. Are you willing to be completely honest with yourself? I have a list. The real reason I won't call my kids is, the real reason I won't call my kids is, well, they're busy. No, come on. The real reason I won't call my kids is, the real reason I'm buying this is, the real reason I'm buying this is, the real reason I'm taking this job is, the real reason I'm taking this job, the real reason I'm moving, the real reason we're moving, the real reason. Come on. You don't have to tell anybody else. You can lie to them all day long, but don't lie to yourself. The real reason we decided to put our house on the market and move. The real reason I filed for divorce is. The real reason you filed for divorce. The real reason I filed for divorce is. You don't have to tell your ex. You don't have to tell your kids, but please, at least admit it to yourself. And when you admit it to yourself, it'll lose some of its power, and you will make a better decision. The real reason we are moving in together, the real reason we're moving in together. I used to do a lot of counseling and a lot of talking to people, and I don't do it anymore. I'm no good at it anyway, but I used to feel like I had to because I was a pastor. And I got so tired of talking to couples who were moving in together. You know, they were going to get married or they weren't going to get married, and we would have these conversations, and half the time they'd already moved in together, and the girl doesn't want the preacher to know, and the guy bumbles his way through and accidentally admits it and says, oh yeah, well, because we moved into, and she's looking anyway. And I honestly, and I'm not, this isn't a rule, this is just my, dysfunction, but I got so tired of because of finances. So finally one time this is probably the end of my counseling career, I looked at this guy, because it's cheaper if we move in together. I'm like, well look, what if I found you a wealthy, ugly girl? I mean, I know I could find some girl, she's not very attractive, she got a lot of money. Why don't you move in with her? I think it's a better deal for you. I mean, if this is just a financial decision, I can find you somebody. She's got a house and a bunch of extra rooms in her basement. She may not even charge your rent if you mow the grass. I didn't know it's a financial issue. I can help you out, buddy. And of course, he's, but I'm thinking, don't give me look. But the thing is, in so many cases, and this isn't a sermon about whether you should live together or not, but I'll tell you what it is a sermon about. If you aren't married and you decide to move in together, please tell yourself the truth. You gain nothing, because here's the other thing about those scenarios. We moved in because of finances, and then all of a sudden they don't live together anymore. I'm going, what happened? Wasn't it better with finances? Yeah, but there were other issues. Really? So maybe, anyway, okay, sorry. My point is this, okay? If you're living together, I'm not even suggesting you move out. I'm just suggesting you tell yourself the truth. Okay. The real reason I drink so much is, let me just tell you, those of you who drink too much, let me tell you something about you, okay? The people who love you the most talk about you behind your back. They do. And here's what they say. They wish you would admit to yourself why you over-medicate yourself with alcohol or prescription drugs. They wish that you would tell yourself and admit to yourself why you do that. Because when they confront you, they hear all the lies that you have told yourself for so long, you believe them now. They wish you would tell yourself the truth about your alcohol and your use of prescription drugs. And when you look in the mirror and have this conversation with yourself, and all of those silly reasons and lies, and they may be justifiable in some ways, but once they're finally out and they begin to lose their power, and you have the courage to sit down with the people who love you the most and say, you know what? I want to be honest. The real reason I drink too much is, when you tell them, they will not say, really? They will say, we know. We're so glad now that you know. And you'll begin to get freedom, because there's no advantage to lying to yourself. You just continue to make the same bad kinds of decisions. The real reason I quit going to church, how many times have I heard, well, you know, back when I was 22 years old, I went to this one church and na happened, and I just don't go to church anymore. Okay, what's the real reason? Well, I mean, again, we come up with scenarios. Come on, you don't have to tell anybody else. You can keep using that silly story all your life. I don't care. But tell yourself the truth. The real reason I'm changing majors. The real reason I'm changing. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Would you be willing, if you're in the middle of making a decision right now, would you be willing to look in the mirror and talk to yourself? I know it's goofy, and tell yourself out loud, the real reason I'm leaning in this direction, the real reason I'm considering this option, the real reason I'm not considering something everybody else thinks I should consider, the real reason I'm not doing the thing that's kind of in my, somewhere in the back of my mind I think I should do, the real reason is because for the rest of your life, you're going to have to make decisions you didn't sign up to make. And for the rest of your life, you're going to be in a situation where you're forced into a scenario that you would never have signed up for. For the rest of your life, you're going to be making decisions. Your life is a series of decisions. And to make the decisions you look back on and are proud of, to make the decisions that are best for you and your family, to make the decisions that are best for you and your future, the starting point is to break the habit of telling yourself a lie. And to be willing to ask this question: why am I doing this? Really? Why am I doing this? Really? Because your heart is deceitful above all things, and there's no cure for it, and you'll never completely understand it. But you can be freed from its control if you will tell yourself the truth. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, I don't know where this lands for all of us today, but you do, and we do. And Father, I pray that you give each of us the wisdom to know what to do with what we just heard from your word, and the courage to do it. We know we're susceptible. We have our own history with this principle. I pray that there would be men and women and teenagers who would go home and today and just acknowledge, just fess up, just own up to have a heart-to-heart with themselves and at least get the real information, the real stuff out in the open so that they can then present that to you and say, Heavenly Father, I want to do the right thing. Bring me to that place. And Father, though our hearts may never fully change, I pray that our relationship to our hearts would, and that you would be the Lord of our lives, and not our hearts, and not our ability to sell ourselves on ideas that don't honor us and certainly don't honor you. So again, give us wisdom to know what to do with what we just heard and the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.